Okay, on the bench today we have a realistic. This is a model TRC 457. It's an AM sideband radio in, I guess, what you could call as close to near mint condition as you can get. Very, very nice condition. Customer sent this radio in with the capacitor kit, which is what this video is on, and a microphone, it's an astatic Night Eagle, which will be a separate video on that. That kills the battery in short order. But this video is not on the radio or the microphone. It is on the capacitor kit that he sent with it. He told me, he says, going to send a cap kit with it he got on eBay. And I told him, I said, you have to be careful buying cap kits on eBay because there are some really, really, just to put it bluntly, crap quality capacitor kits on there. You're being ripped off. And this is one of them. They use basically the cheapest capacitors that can be had. And you're just asking for problems in very short order. So, you know, in the case of this radio, the customer's not doing the capacitor replacement himself. He sent it to me. So, you know, I'm going to charge him a labor rate to do this. So, and shipping. So, you know, do I install that cap kit and within a year's time he starts having problems? Because I've seen some of these cheap cap kits where people literally did a cap job themselves, and within a year they're having problems. You know, they get a hold of me and, hey, you know, could you take a look at my radio? It doesn't work. And, you know, I find a bad capacitor. It's some cheap piece of junk. And I asked them, I said, did you just have the capacitors replaced recently? And they said, yeah, I did it about a year ago or something like that. And I said, well, they're going bad already. So what does this kit include? This kit, as you can see, it comes in this big envelope. Now, it's very nice, the layout, the presentation of it. I mean, it looks like, it's, you know, professional kit. It's just the problem is the quality of the parts that are in there. The majority of them, actually. So, well, what kind of different qualities can you get? Well, you can get what I use. And honestly, folks, they don't cost that much more. You can see especially the size of these capacitors. They're small. Honestly, the price difference usually for cheap-ass crap to extremely high-quality capacitors is usually only a couple cents. So you'll usually have, you know, a few. Now it depends greatly on the radio and whatnot, but, you know, a few or a couple dollars difference in the price of the actual capacitors. Now I have seen good capacitor kits on eBay that use good quality caps. Now, me personally, I use primarily, not all, but primarily I use either Nichicon or Panasonic, Matsushita. Yeah, not Mitsubishi, it's Panasonic Matsushita. But I use good quality capacitors. The kind of stuff you would find right now, today, if you open up a piece of high-end electronics. It's the same brand you're going to find in high-end electronics today. Or in commercial, industrial equipment. You know, stuff that's meant to last for 30 years. So what does this capacitor kit have in it? Well, I can tell you. It has the cheapest thing that was on the Shenzhen market that day. Now, I know this customer probably did not buy them directly in Shenzhen. He got them from some supplier, probably here in the U.S., but Shenzhen, if you're not familiar with the electronics industry in China, the Shenzhen province is pretty much the Silicon Valley of China nowadays. And, you know, a lot of people will fault the Chinese. Well, they're making all that crap. Well, it's your fault. It's our fault. You know, the American people's fault. If you want cheap shit, that's exactly what they're going to build. The Chinese can build stuff to exacting standards just like we can, the Swiss or the German. It's just how much do you want to pay for something. And that's all it comes down to, money. Well, the majority of people nowadays don't want to pay anything for anything. They're so used to buying stuff cheap that when they see a high price sticker, it scares them away, not realizing that, well, it probably costs more because it is a better item. You know, I don't use cheap tools. Pretty much, you know, all my tools, I buy Snap-on, Mac, X-Lite, you know, good, really high quality, really frigging expensive, but they last a lifetime. You know, They're tools you can pass down for generations, and they have a lifetime warranty. Well, capacitors are no different. You can get, well, they're not guaranteed for life, but you can get really good high-quality capacitors, or you can get this shit. Yeah, JWCO. Never heard of them. Yeah, registered trademark. Well, that's nice, because... And I'd actually be interested to see that. Actually see if it even is. They probably just put that R in a circle on there just so it looks like a good high-quality cap. This one here is a, what? WKXC. Yeah, another one. I never heard of it. What do we got here? Huahong. Yeah, whoever the hell Huahong is. More absolute no-name junk. The cheapest thing that was on the Shenzhen market that day. Like I say, nothing against the Chinese, because they're just building what people want, and people want cheap shit. So they want cheap parts, well, they'll make them too. They can make good quality parts. We'll open this other bag up. Now, this was actually what kind of surprised me. I guess it just happened to be whatever this person could get cheap that day. But the majority of all these caps, they're all crap quality, with the exception of, what? 2. I see 2, no, 3 right there. There's 1, 2, 3. They're easy to pick out because they're brown, which is what made catch my eye, because that's what color most of my capacitors are. So if we flip this one around, you can see, if we focus, hocus pocus. Come on, guy. That's a Nichicon, which is the brand that I use. Now these are, what are they? PF series. Now I use PW, but it's 105 degree C cap. But these two, and there's one other one floating around in here, right there. These are good quality caps, so I might use these 3 caps. But the rest of these, yeah, they're not worth their whatever you can get for scrap aluminum and copper. That's about what they're worth. What do we got here? Some more Huahang, or yeah, whatever the hell it is. I think I saw some Chongs. Yeah, there's a Chonger. There's a Chong cap. So yeah, cheap junk, guaranteed to fail in no time. So just be wary of buying capacitor kits on eBay to restore your vintage CB radio. It's real simple. Look at the pictures and see if they have a picture of the actual capacitors like you will be receiving. If everything, most of those sellers, now like I say, I do use a couple different brands, but most sellers, if they're selling cap kits, good cap kits, they will all be one brand and one series. So like if they're using Nichicon, they'll be all PF or PW series caps. But if they all look like they had the exact same name on them, that's a good sign. If it doesn't look like it's a Chinese name, like I say, that's another good sign. If it looks like a Japanese name, that is a good sign. Because like I say, Nichicon, there's lots of companies out there. Nichicon, Rubicon, Panasonic, Matsushita, there's lots of them. But there's more of these cheap ones. So just something to be aware of. Like I say, the last thing you want to do is, especially in the case of this radio, because, the customer's going to have to pay me to replace them. The last thing he wants to do is send it back to me, a year from now to have it done again. So, like I say, I had informed him of that, and I'll be using my capacitors with the exception of maybe those 3 Nichicons that are in that kit. Otherwise, yeah. And it's sad. It's cutthroat industry. People trying to make money, selling their stuff, their wares on eBay, which is fine. I mean, I get a boatload of stuff on eBay. But I know electronics, so I know the difference in quality of parts. And like I say, if you look at this kit, that looks professional. Triple Ziploc bag, 2 separate baggies with caps. Everything that comes with it is individually marked, comes in another bag with another big piece of paper telling you what it fits and everything. So, I mean, you're thinking, man, that looks like a nice kit. It's just what I need. Well, yeah, not so much. And one other thing. Well, I'm on capacitors in these radios. And he was nice enough to write this on here. Note modern components are generally much smaller than their 70s counterparts, and note the higher voltage components may be furnished. It's always acceptable to use higher voltage components when substituting electrolytics. Absolutely 100% true. In very, very many cases, the capacitors, even the high-quality capacitors I use, are much smaller in size, physically. I don't mean values, I mean the actual physical size. So, a capacitor was this big in a radio gets replaced. The modern replacement might only be this big, and be of a higher voltage rating. And that's the other thing, voltage ratings. Never, ever, ever use a smaller voltage rating when you're replacing an electrolytic capacitor. Always use either the same, or in most radios, honestly, preferably larger. A lot of the caps you'll see in a lot of radios are going to be, 16. I've seen 10s. Christ, I've even seen some 6.3 volt caps. It never hurts to install larger voltage ratings, because the closer you get to a capacitor's maximum voltage rating, that starts to decrease its lifespan. Same thing with temperature. For every 10 degrees C you get increase in temperature, you half the capacitor's life. So temperature has a huge role in a capacitor's lifetime also. But the voltage rating, for the most part, with the exception usually of maybe some of the really big caps, like on the power supply, filter cap, and there'll usually be 1, maybe 2 at the right close to the audio amp in your radio. Those I might install 35 volt only because for starters, I'm replacing a 16 volt usually in those instances, or maybe a 25 volt cap, but I'll use a 35. I don't use a 50 because it would just be physically too big to fit on the circuit board. But for the majority of all of these other ones, like all of these, basically everything in this cap kit, with the exception of this one big one, when I put my capacitors in it, they'll all be 50 volt. This one has 16s, 25s, 50s. It's got, brands all over the map, voltage ratings all over the map. So, just another thing to keep in mind. Capacitor voltage. Never go down, but you can always go up with electrolytics. So, there you go. Cheap cap kits on eBay.